we present this little light.
To oppose a divided Republican challenge. There was to be no controversy at this convention, no debate. Yet the Freedom Democratic Party challenge threatened, for a day or two at least, to split the convention wide open. Here, Governor David Lawrence of Pennsylvania, the chairman of the Credentials Committee, which would attempt to moderate the convention challenge, emphasized these points on the opening day of the hearings.
We will nominate Lyndon Johnson for president by acclamation. We will nominate the person he designates as his choice for vice president by acclamation. And we will adopt the platform written in the context of 4 years of unparalleled accomplishment by the Kennedy and Johnson administrations by acclamation. There are no contests for office and little of any disagreement on issues. We have, ladies and gentlemen, a tremendous obligation to the party, to the two great presidents who have led us, to America and to ourselves. Let us bear that obligation with honor and with determination and seek to resolve the differences brought before us in justice and with reason.
This program is the story of the Freedom Democratic Party's bid for seating in Atlantic City. Delegates and alternates of the challenging party arrived in Atlantic City during the preceding weeks, lobbied among other delegations, and then on Saturday presented their case to the full Credentials Committee. Their attorney was Joseph Rao, a delegate from the District of Columbia and the legal counsel for the United Automobile Workers.
Members of the Credentials Committee, I have only an hour to tell you a story of terror and tragedy in Mississippi. In this hour, I shall show you that the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party is the loyal, legal, and long-suffering body of Mississippi. The first witness is the chairman of our delegation, the president of the NAACP in Mississippi, a successful businessman from Clarksdale, Mr. Aaron Henry.
Mr. Chairman and members of the Credentials Committee of the National Democratic Party, the position of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party is clearly identified on the side of the National Democratic Party. We are willing to work with all loyal Democrats in the state of Mississippi who will work for the election of President Lyndon Johnson. The Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party is great enough to include all loyal Democrats. We want to minimize our differences and maximize our chances for carrying the state of Mississippi and the nation for President Lyndon Johnson in November. In a recent statement in reference to the murder of Michael Swerner, James Chaney, and Andrew Goodman, 3 civil rights workers that were lynched in our state, Governor Paul Johnson, the head of the Democratic Party, at the Neshoba County Fair in Philadelphia, Mississippi, had this to say: "No one in Mississippi condones murder, but we're not going to be run over." The contempt held by the Mississippi Democratic Party for this convention is evidenced by the fact that it has as one of its legal counsels here a Mr. E.C. Collins of our state, who stated in regard to the segregation question on September 25, 1962, "We must win this fight regardless of the cost in human lives." We of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party have tried all we know how to become a part and improve the Mississippi Democratic Party. Negroes were even denied the right to enter the buildings where the conventions were held. But even if we had been admitted to attend the precinct conventions, this would have meant that only 6% of the Negro citizens of our state would have had the right to participate in the Democratic Party.
The second speaker presenting the Freedom Party case was the Reverend Ed King, a chaplain at Tougaloo and a member of the party's State Executive Committee.
My home is Vicksburg, Mississippi. I now live in Jackson. My wife is from Jackson, Mississippi. I went to college in Mississippi, did my graduate work in freer parts of the nation. I have returned to Mississippi and am working for a free society in Mississippi and hope to work through the Democratic Party for that society. There are not many white people openly working this way in Mississippi. We have 4 white delegates in our freedom delegation here. There are more who would like to have supported us but could not do so for fear of their very lives. I know many Mississippians. In the last several years, over 100 ministers and college teachers have been forced to leave the state. This nation is being populated with refugees from the closed society in Mississippi. One issue that is before you today is who represents you, the National Democratic Party. We maintain that the regular Democratic Party for Mississippi does not represent you and your interest. This is the party which tolerates violence, church burnings, and murder as the ultimate weapon to prevent Negro voting. This is the party which has aided the reign of terror in our state this summer, so that we admit honestly to you, we do not come before you with delegates from every county in the state. We were not able to hold county convention in Neshoba County or precinct meetings in Philadelphia. We are not here, and we have not worked this summer to divide the Democratic Party. We are trying to provide a Democratic Party for Mississippi. A Democratic Party in Mississippi which will support the national platform, the national party, and the national candidates, and work for those people it says it's supporting.
Several other delegates from Mississippi described conditions in the state to the Credentials Committee, and then national civil rights leaders dealt with national and international repercussions of the seating of the Mississippi delegation. Typical of their remarks are those of the Reverend Martin Luther King.
The seating of the delegation from the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party has political and moral significance far beyond the borders of Mississippi, or the halls of this convention, or the shores of this nation. For here the very idea of representative government is at stake. The extension and preservation of freedom around the world depends on its unequivocal presence within our borders. The recognition of white and Negro citizens who seek to realize the democratic process within their home state is essential to the moral health of this party and this nation. Ladies and gentlemen, if you value your party, if you value your nation, if you value the future of democratic government, you have no alternative but to recognize with full voice and vote the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party.
The Credentials Committee also heard testimony from the regular delegation that first Saturday. It was presented by Mr. E.K. Collins, who was the newly elected state committeeman. The following are brief excerpts from his lengthy presentation and that of his only witness, Rubel Griffin, the Assistant Attorney General of Mississippi.
Honorable Chairman, I want to first assure you that Mississippi comes here today without coming to malign anyone, comes here as the regular Democratic Party for almost 100 years in the state of Mississippi, and during those 100 years, only 2 times have they not supported the National Democratic nominees all the way. Is this convention of a great political party, which has with pride for many years used the name Democrat, going to practice democracy and seat the lawful and regular delegation which represents the people of Mississippi? Or shall this convention throw democracy to the winds and accept a group who represent no one, a group who seek power on the basis of unproven claims which are nothing more than a tax upon the proud people of a state of this nation? Mr. Chairman, I would now like to call the Honorable Rubel Griffin, Assistant Attorney General of the state of Mississippi, as my only witness.
Ladies and gentlemen of this committee, this, of course, is quite an experience for a country lawyer, and I don't think I need to tell you that I'm somewhat awed by the situation in which I find myself. I come here not only as a lawyer representing my state, of which I am proud, believe it or not, in spite of all you have heard about it, But I speak to you, my friends, as a Democrat, as one who does not want the Democratic Party to die in the state of Mississippi or any other state in the Union.
The regular party's case was essentially a legal one. They argued that precinct meetings were not held throughout the state, that where held, they did not conform with Mississippi law, and they attempted to demonstrate that the Freedom Party was not a bona fide political group, but rather a protest organization. Finally, Mr. Griffin argued,
If you seat these people as your delegates, I ask you now, who shall put the name of President Johnson on the ballot in November? There will be no party in Mississippi to put President Johnson's name on the ballot on the Democratic label. The only way they could put his name on there would be by petition. And we all know that is not effective. I believe that you would do your party harm, you would gain nothing. And I beg of you, and I beseech you, do not kill our party. Thank you.
To these arguments, Mr. Rao replied in his rebuttal.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, you get a kind of a sweet talk here. They talk one way in Mississippi and they talk another way here. And what does this group, Johnson and Barnett, say about Negroes? Last year, Johnson campaigned up and down the state of Mississippi saying, you know what the NAACP stands for? Niggers, alligators, apes, coons, and possums. Are you going to see the delegation sent by a man like that? They said, our party's not a legal party. What does it take to be a legal party in Mississippi? Theirs is certainly not a legal party. They didn't have a Negro in the entire state convention. Not only there's nobody on their delegation, there wasn't a Negro in the whole state convention. They excluded them all. That illegalizes their party, and on that ground alone, they oughtn't to be seated. What about us? The law is clear that when there are two groups with substantial membership, and we have it right there, you have the right to choose the loyal. You have the right to choose those who work for you or for your platform. And so I say to you, in all seriousness and in all earnestness, in these concluding feelings, we will not win this election by hauling down the flag of principle. But what is much more important, we won't deserve to win.
It was clear from the first day of the Credentials Committee hearings, however, that the decision of which delegation to seat would not be made on moral grounds, but on strictly political ones. Convention leaders were determined to prevent any possible Dixiecrat revolt at the convention, and hence they were determined to reach some compromise agreement. In the cross-examination of witnesses from the two delegations, Sherman Markman of Iowa, a key member of the committee, indicated the kind of compromise that key party members wanted to see.
Dr. Henry, isn't the real effort here to dramatize to this convention the fact that Negroes are excluded from participating in party affairs in Mississippi?
That is perhaps a part of the statement. The real question, however, is our desire to participate in the National Democratic Party.
Wouldn't the most, as a matter of fact, the most constructive thing that this committee and this convention could do here in Atlantic City would be to take some steps to improve the situation of discrimination which exists in the, admittedly exists in the Democratic, regular Democratic Party in the state of Mississippi?
I've said, sir, we are willing to work with all of the loyal Democrats who will work for the support of Lyndon Johnson, who will endorse the platform of the National Democratic Party and will support its philosophy. And we certainly would hope that some formula could be worked out wherein all of the loyal Democrats who want to support Lyndon Johnson could work together.
Following on from that, would it be a fair statement, really, that there is and can be, in the long run, but one Democratic Party in the state of Mississippi, not two or three or more, and the ideal ultimate solution would be to have that party be open to all regardless of race?
That's a very fair statement, sir.
And, sir, if this committee and this convention can take positive and meaningful action to ensure that that one Democratic Party in Mississippi is open to all, then that would be at least a constructive step for this committee and this convention to undertake.
In addition to preventing any possible Dixiecrat walkout if the regular party were not seated, convention leaders also feared that a minority of the Credentials Committee might file a minority report if the Freedom Party delegation were not seated, and bring the convention challenge to the floor, where the dispute would be argued before national television cameras. No decision was reached on Saturday, and then on Sunday, Congresswoman Edith Green of Oregon suggested a different compromise.
The proposal, which is a compromise, would say that every single member of the, quote, the official Mississippi delegation and every member of the Freedom Democratic Party delegation should be asked by the Credentials Committee if they would support the Democratic nominee for the president and the vice president of this convention, and that every single person in both of these groups who is willing to take the loyalty oath would be seated on the floor of the convention as a delegate.
The Credentials Committee was almost in continuous session Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday morning. It quickly became clear that the regular delegation would be required to sign some kind of oath, but it also became clear that the Freedom Party delegation would not be seated with Mississippi. Sherman Markman, arguing for the majority of the party, said that he saw the issue largely in terms of legal precedent.
Mr. Markham, what rule of the convention would be violated by seating the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party?
They are not the regular Democratic Party in the state of Mississippi. We have both General Counsel, Mr. Leventhal of the National Democratic Committee. We also have Special Counsel of the Credentials Committee. They are respectively the attorneys for the Democratic Party at large and for our Credentials Committee. They in turn have a large and experienced legal staff. Mr. Leventhal is a former law clerk of Mr. Justice Cardozo, and they have stated that the legal position is without any merit whatsoever.
Markman recommended that the regular delegation sign an oath and that the Freedom delegation be seated as honored guests at the back of the hall. The Green proposal, however, attracted enough delegates for a minority report, and to prevent this, the argument went on into the first days of the convention proceedings. Delegates were split on the issue. Good, disciplined party regulars like Mayor Daley of Chicago were sure that some compromise could be worked out.
Mayor Daley, what is the position of the Illinois delegation about the seating of the Mississippi delegation?
Well, we met in caucus on Sunday, and we adopted a resolution strongly condemning the practice of depriving any American citizen the right to vote, the right to register. And in the same resolution, we said if people attend the convention, it's expected they will support the nominees of the convention. If they're contested or challenged, then we think there should be a declaration of intent to support, work for, and endorse the candidates of this convention. That's our policy.
If the Mississippi regular delegation should refuse to take such a pledge, and the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party does agree to take such a pledge, where would the Illinois delegation stand at that point?
I'm convinced that it can be worked out some way. There must be a solution to these problems.
Others were not so convinced that a compromise should be made with the regular delegation.
Senator Morse, there's been some question about the legality of the Freedom Democratic Party's bid for even partial seating due to the method by which they handle their precincts. I don't believe precinct meetings were held in all the counties of Mississippi. Would you care to comment on that?
Well, you do have a problem with so-called statutory legality, but you certainly can't talk about legality in connection with either delegation. He certainly can't defend the regular delegation as a constitutionally elected delegation in view of its violation of the 13th and 14th Amendments of the Constitution.
In the newspapers, there's been some commentary about Senator Humphrey's role in seeking to avoid a floor fight on this issue and to seat the regular Mississippi delegation with some exclusive provisions. Would you comment about this, sir?
Well, Senator Humphrey in 1948 did a magnificent job on the civil rights issue. He did a magnificent job in taking the civil rights bill through the Senate of the United States this year. I think his proposed compromise is a very unfortunate compromise and doesn't represent a political golf game of par for Hubert.
Do you think that in the event that any portion of the Freedom Democratic Party were seated as part of the delegation, that the rest of the South would unanimously walk out of the convention?
Well, I haven't the slightest idea what they would do, but I would ask the question, so what?
On Monday and Tuesday, the question became, how much would the Freedom delegation have to be given to prevent minority report? By Tuesday afternoon, that minimum had been found.
We recommend the seating as the delegates and alternates from Mississippi of those members of the regular Democratic Party of Mississippi who subscribe to the following assurance. We, the undersigned members of the Mississippi delegation to the 1964 Democratic National Convention, hereby each formally assure the convention of our intention to support the convention's nominees in the forthcoming general election. 2.
The Credentials Committee report also recommended that the convention take steps to see to it that delegations in 1968 would have to ensure that all voters in their states, regardless of race, had an opportunity to vote, that a committee be established to aid state Democratic parties in assuring the right to vote to all citizens, that the Freedom Party delegates be seated as honored guests, and that Aaron Henry and Reverend Ed King be given 1 vote each as delegates at large. This agreement was sufficient to prevent any minority report, and some of the delegates, like Edith Green, felt that it was a victory.
Well, I think that there has been great progress over what they were willing to give on Sunday afternoon at the first executive meeting of the Credentials Committee. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And the fact that there are members of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party on the floor of the convention is evidence of it. So in this respect, we should really be very happy over the victory that has been obtained. It's been a long, hard fight.
The 2 delegations from Mississippi met immediately after the Credentials Committee report to determine their own response to it. National civil rights leaders were asked to give their views to the Freedom Party delegation, and most of them agreed that a victory had been won, and advised the Freedom delegation to accept it. Bayard Rustin summed up the view of many of them.
I think that regardless of what others may think, I feel that the offer of this compromise was a tremendous victory. And I am sure that they are creative enough to use that victory to strengthen their party.
Dr. Rustin, how much of a role did Humphrey play in this, do you feel?
Well, I think my own personal view is that Mr. Humphrey played a very creative and helpful role.
But despite such civil rights leaders, the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party delegation voted to reject the compromise.
The thing about the Credentials Committee report that was, shall I say, most unacceptable was that the Credentials Committee itself attempted to spell out the fact that not only would we only have 2 votes at the convention, but that these 2 votes could not be cast for the state of Mississippi. And it is our position that that symbolizes our whole reason for being here, the denial of the right to vote in Mississippi. There was this issue also in the Credentials Committee's report, and that is the report of the Credentials Committee sought to not only say how many votes we would have, but who in our delegation would have the vote. And that is somehow symbolic of white America through the years, saying to Negro Americans who your leaders will be.
Mrs. Hammer, how do you feel about this? You feel you've accomplished something in coming here to this convention?
Yes, some of the things I wouldn't care to answer, but I say this, that in coming to this national convention, one of the reasons that we stand up to not compromise, we are tired of tokenism in the state of Mississippi, and we didn't come here for tokenism, and we just, I'm grateful that I could come, but we were out, so we just out. We would like to, if we, we will, just, I feel all right about it, but we still didn't want just 2 votes.
Dr. King, what's your reaction?
I feel we've come here, we've been very reasonable. Our position from the beginning was that the regular, white, racist delegation from Mississippi has no right to attend this convention. I feel they have no right to have senators or representatives in the Congress. They are not a democratic society under our Constitution. We are challenging that. We said that we would compromise on the Green proposal and accept equal seating with them. Beyond this, I think, had it been proposed, we would even have accepted the compromise of both delegations not being seated. This convention tried to recognize the racist delegates of Mississippi. They were rebuffed by them.
The formal convention machinery had been exhausted, and the Freedom delegation had not been seated. It had recourse, however, to techniques developed in the struggle in Mississippi: demonstration. Throughout the deliberations of the Credentials Committee, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, and the Congress of Racial Equality had maintained a silent vigil on the boardwalk outside Convention Hall. At times, as many as 300 people sat or stood on the boardwalk in the hot sun to the curious looks of delegates and spectators. A rally on Monday night drew 1,500 people, and at least 100 delegates remained, around the clock, on the board through the long, quiet nights. After the report on Tuesday, demonstrators attempted to enter the hall en masse. They were turned back, but during Wednesday and Thursday, familiar faces from Mississippi began to appear on the convention floor, with the two-way radios that identify a movement worker in Mississippi. The Freedom delegates also had their point to make. Here is Dave Welsh on the floor of the convention.
Waiting for the convention to begin here on the convention floor at Atlantic City. In the Mississippi delegation, the seats allotted for the Mississippi delegation is Mr. Randy Holliday of Mississippi, a member of the regular delegation who took the Pledge of Loyalty. If some members of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party should present themselves here at the Mississippi seats to the convention, what would be the action that you would take, sir?
I would not sit with them if they were made delegates, but I'm informed they won't be made delegates.
Mrs. Fanny Lou Hammer and the Reverend Ed King of the Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party delegation have arrived on the scene, and it is believed they will attempt to sit in the Mississippi delegation space. 6 members of the delegation have entered, are standing in front of the Mississippi delegation, and are holding up signs saying "One man, one vote, Mississippi Freedom Democratic Party." The impassive faces behind them, presumably sergeants at arms, with the exception of 3 members of the regular Mississippi delegation, do not appear disturbed by the incident. Reverend Whitley, you are a delegate from the Freedom Democratic Party, is that correct, sir?
Yes, it is.
Reverend Whitley, what is the purpose of why are you here tonight? Why are the members of the Freedom Democratic Party here tonight in front of the Mississippi delegation?
I would say to make a further indication of our firm belief that every American citizen of voting age ought to have one vote.
Mr. Scott, do you feel this is a large stride toward equal rights in Mississippi, this convention challenge?
I think this is one of the greatest things that has happened in the entire freedom movement, for us to be here on this floor tonight.
Do you think this will help bring about a breakthrough in Mississippi?
Definitely so, definitely so.
The convention challenge was dramatic, and although it fell far short of its goal of unseating the regular delegation did not sit on the convention floor in any numbers, and the Freedom Party did receive national attention. It was a force that had to be dealt with. Perhaps the best summary of these accomplishments was that of A.W. Steptoe, sitting in the Mississippi delegation on Wednesday night, talking with Dave Welsh.
So how does I feel? How does I feel? Oh, I begin to feel like I'm about to become a part of America. I have a different feeling than I usually have. I feel like I'm being recognized as a citizen of America.
This has been Part 10 of This Little Light, a series of documentaries on Mississippi in 1964. The programs were produced from studio and field recordings made in Mississippi by Chris Koch, Dale Miner, and Dave Welch. Production assistants were Kathy Dobkin and Willie Ross. The programs were written and produced by Chris Koch for Pacifica Radio.